You're watching the Action Sports Jax 24/7 network. Now it's time for the Brent Austen Show.
Hey, what's happening on a Tuesday? Welcome in, everybody. I'm sure when you're driving around Beach Boulevard throughout the last 24 hours, you were looking for front tires.
Come on, Brent. We're past
bikes.
We're past it.
I was.
I was looking too this morning.
Left and right.
Oh, dude, I'm thankful I didn't get an accident, in that nice Bozar built truck, because I was like, hey, head was completely turned. Just, I wish this dude would pop up again. We're all good, though.
You got us all looking.
Yeah.
Steph was kind of mad at you, by the way.
Why's that?
Yeah, she's like, I can't believe you didn't go around.
I know.
She was disappointed.
Listen, if this was on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday, sure, why not? Yeah. But Brent, we had things to break down.
We did.
We had things to talk about.
It is a big show.
Yeah.
Tuesday can be a big show as well. Thank the Miami Dolphins for saving Florida football, the state of Florida football, that is, not the Gators. I don't know if anything can save that, but the only team to win in the state of Florida this weekend.
We had some, high schools won, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone tied.
It's a very off week of high school because it's an in-between week.
I gotcha. Everyone's on their bye. Yeah.
The Dolphins look good yesterday. How about Calais Campbell, man? Still playing well, huh?
Yeah, it's insane.
Unbelievable.
Listen, I'm happy to see it, man.
I love it.
Listen, if you spend whatever $100,000 in your body a year, I guess that allows you to do that, but it's amazing how, obviously he's not playing every single rep anymore.
Yeah.
But he hasn't really, for his age and everything, usually it's a time you fall off, but that dude was everywhere last night.
I was stunned he played again this year, but that shows you how he feels, right? And how he's still playing well. And we saw him against the Jags. Remember, it was the first play against the Jags.
Oh yeah.
And he blows something up, or he got a sack or something. I think he had a sack on Trevor.
I think it was a sack or a tip ball. I can't remember. It might have been a sack.
But I think he had a tackle for loss in the game. Yesterday's game, he did that against the Jags. And I haven't seen every Dolphins game, so I don't know exactly how he's playing, but obviously he's healthy. There was a lot of talk about him moving at the trade deadline because he's probably playing well enough at this point to help somebody out. It doesn't feel like he could hurt this team if he was here, I can tell you that. And there were some rumblings that he could be here. The last couple of times in free agency that he could come back to Jacksonville, just never turned out that way. The cool thing about Calais is I haven't experienced this in my 16 years here. A guy leaves Jacksonville and everybody roots for him.
Yeah.
I've never seen it like it now. Or the early days of Jacksonville might have been somebody different. Again, I wasn't covering those days, so I'm not as close to that. But usually when somebody leaves Jacksonville, for the most part, you're like, I hope you have the worst career ever, right? Or screw you because you're playing better, right? Or just nothing. I think everybody's still in Jacksonville, man. Every time this guy makes a play, every time you say Calais Campbell's name, everybody's like, good for him. Awesome.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
It's really wild. Obviously, I have such a bias toward Calais, but at the same time, I think I'm not alone. That is my point,
man.
Right?
I think if you feel a certain type of way against Calais, man, you're definitely in the minority. You're essentially on your own.
Yeah.
Everyone loves that dude.
He's definitely the poster boy for that. Jags fans rooting for him. But if Miles Jack would have kept playing, he would have been that guy too, in my opinion.
But he wasn't
really.
He didn't really play after we got rid of him. He played 1 year on the Steelers, and then
he was a couple years, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was in there. He bounced. He was with the Steelers for a couple of years.
Even Mercedes Lewis come to mind.
Mercedes Lewis is a good.
Well, but okay, and I can't remember I was doing the show with you, but I don't remember how it all went down. Weren't people still kind of cheering for Leonard Fournette, or not, or were they kind of over him?
I don't think they minded the whole Super Bowl run and everything else. Yeah, I don't think they minded it, but I don't know if it was openly rooting. I think what was interesting about the Leonard stuff is Leonard built a little bit of some grace with some of the fan base. He would jump on and play video games with them.
Yeah.
So there was that part of it. Mm-hmm. I think that was a smaller segment of people, but I think that's probably what you're referencing.
Yeah.
I think the Mercedes Lewis one's a good one. I think the interesting part about Mercedes is he's really been, even since he left the Jags and what that would have been after 17 season, or maybe it was after the 18 season, he's been a very quiet performer.
Yeah.
So you don't hear his name a lot. What he does is very quiet. You still see Calais, right?
Yeah.
You feel Calais still years later.
Yeah, you feel Calais, but it's you hear, Mercedes' effect on the team, it's more internal, right? He's not going to have, 10 targets a game, obviously, things like that. But I think from a leadership standpoint. Like, I watch a lot of Packers games, and like Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure if you really want Aaron Rodgers endorsement anymore, but like Aaron Rodgers thought the world of him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Mercedes is a really good one. Like if Posluszny had left, he would fit.
Oh, dude,
right? But his career ended here in Jacksonville.
What about if Meester would have left? Meester would have been like Jason Kelsey.
Yeah. Yeah, there are candidates here.
Meester would have been Jason Kelsey before Jason Kelsey. Like if Meester would have been like went to a big market and like played as long as he did. Oh, dude, it's Jason Kelsey.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Be having a farming podcast and stuff, crushing it.
He's coaching high school ball now, Brad Meester
in Iowa, right?
In Iowa, yeah. It was just interesting thinking about Calais in that respect. He's still getting it done at 38. The Dolphins looked good last night. Well, I should say the Dolphins' defense looked good last night. I think Tua's a weird performer for me. I was almost tweeted during that game in the first half, like, man, he looks terrible.
Yeah.
Like he made, like the interception was bad. The fumble was bad. He took like 3 sacks that were really bad.
Yeah.
And then he kind of runs the offense and operates and gets it going to the point where he won a football game. Like he made some plays. He's a weird guy for me. That must be a wrestling match, a mental gymnastics thing down in Miami sometimes with him.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he doesn't do anything that's like wow either.
I mean, yeah, I understand. Like, listen, it helps me play with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle,
he gets
right?
him the ball.
And it helps when you have an offensive-minded coach, I think, like Mike McDaniel. But yeah, I get what you're saying where, like, I don't know if it's really a consistency. It's just like, it's not really an up and, is it like up and down? Because I don't remember Tua having like a 5 interception kind of game, but like, I don't know.
But yesterday felt up and down for me, but I think it never looks right. You know what it is? It's like a great point guard that can't shoot. You know what I mean?
Ben Simmons.
Rajon Rondo.
Okay, Rajon
right?
Rondo. Yeah.
So Rondo who can distribute, right? And he can win with them, right? And,
Sure.
and he kind of feels gluish, if you will, the glue guy. But he can't shoot.
What an insult! I mean, and Rondo's like the dude. But I'm saying, like when you call a quarterback the Rajon Rondo of the NFL, I feel like that's like disrespect. But no, I think you're right.
And Rajon Rondo got paid a lot of money to play for a long time, right?
I was just saying Ben Simmons because he can't shoot a free throw.
And
but
Simmons might be.
Well, Simmons just got benched though.
Did I see a thing? He had like 10 assists in like a really small window of time yesterday or something like that.
I feel like he just got benched, man.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know. Stay tuned for Slam Poetry, Brent. We'll see.
Yeah, that's right. We'll tell you later in the week.
Tua dropping his head on an interception.
That was. Again, your respect for going to make the tackle and not just getting out of the way. But how about we don't?
But Brent, like in that moment, though, you think yeah, that's right. I've had a lot of concussions. This game's going 100 miles per hour. Let me just go ahead and make a business. Like, come on, like that's just.
I know it doesn't go through your mind, but that's problem. That's a problem.
Does anybody want to win the
lead with your head?
Yeah, I hear you. Does anybody want to win the NFC West, or what are we doing? Yeah. Honestly,
I don't know. I mean, don't you get a feel that San Fran's going to eventually like get hot because they do?
Yeah, I hear you. But Kyler Murray bump.
Well, I mean,
the Cardinals are in first place right now, which I'm not gonna lie, I'd never would have thought in a million years.
They're playing really well, and they're playing just good ball, like not anything crazy, not lighting the world. Well, actually, they did kind of light the world on fire the other day against the Jets, right? 31-6. Yeah, that's a great. It's. I don't feel like it's a pillow fight.
No, because I think I thought the Rams had that game. I don't know what the spread was, but I would have put all my money on the Rams last night. If I was going to bet, I thought the Rams, that was tailor-made.
They ran into a desperate Dolphins team. I mean,
no, for sure. Desperate. But you have Cooper Kupp back, you have Puka back. The offense is pretty much back now. This is where you start to make your run and remind everybody, hey, we went to the playoffs last year with a lot less. Let's do it again, and you couldn't do it last night.
Yeah. Well, the teeth of that Miami defense is the passing defense,
sure.
Right? So it's kind of the what they do well in the Rams. Yeah, I just felt. I don't feel like it's a bad division, Hamby, in the West, but I do. I don't know who's going to win it. I would put a lot of money on San Francisco still winning it. Wouldn't you, Hamby?
I mean, yeah, of course, now that Christian McCaffrey's back, it seems like they're bound to kind of figure out their offensive struggles. But, in his first game back with all of their receivers, with their injuries to the receivers, how much can Christian McCaffrey really do is the question. And we think that he's obviously unbelievable. But, Buccaneers don't have a good defense, and he scored 23 points. That's 1 week with him back, but they're going to have to score a lot more to win this division. He
gives them some juice, and they've hung in there without him, and with some of the injuries and other things. How about Debo? How about going after the long snapper?
You see that they're all cool now, supposedly. Yeah, but
that
was listen, And they lost that game or they won that game? I can't remember now.
They won
it.
The Bucks, yeah.
Like, we would talk about this Jaguars team, like, can you lose in peace? Can the 49ers win in peace?
I know it.
Like, man.
You know what I think of when I see that?
By the way, you weren't wrong. That is a big long snapper.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
I mean, dude's name's Debo. Like, he's a big dude himself. And this guy's towering over Debo.
Debo was having a bad day from the jump when he walked in with shorts and whatever he was wearing.
Jake Moody caught a little bit of it right there.
Yeah, it was really intended for Moody, apparently, is the story, right? He said something like lock in or something like that. He had missed 3 kicks. And so then the long snapper sticking up for him. Nobody's going to do that to Logan Cook, by the way, because Logan Cook is bigger than most people on the Jags. But you know what I thought about coming out of this? And this ties into a little bit of like everybody was a bit upset about Trayvon Walker's final penalty. And don't we need a little bit? Do we need more of that in Jacksonville? I'm not saying you need drama and everything else, but once in a while, is it okay to do that? Like, look like you've lost your mind for a second.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. If we have this, is it also okay to do? How about?
What's this one? Oh, there we go. We got a fight down
there.
there.
That was Pickens, right? Yeah.
This was back-to-back plays, pretty much.
Yeah,
we had a great weekend.
Those are football things to me. I think the Debo one's a lot different. You know,
I mean, it's your own. Well, yeah. I mean, this one's kind of it's a little aggressive.
But do the Jags need? Is that what people have been asking for? Is a little bit of that. That's why
Jared Odrick on the sidelines going ballistic. Remember that?
Yeah. Again, I know it's got to be within reason, but we've kind of said quietly at times, right? 0-3, 0-4. Is somebody going to throw a helmet off the room? Is somebody going to throw the Gatorade cooler? Right? Is somebody going to do something?
I think it speaks volumes because it's funny. One of my somebody that I trained with brought listen to the show, and I'm training last night, and they go, "Hey, you guys didn't really talk about Trayvon, did you?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I forgot."
Yeah.
Like, I think it speaks volumes when you had an incident where, let's call a spade, essentially a penalty, maybe a foolish play cost your team the game. And we didn't even talk about it yesterday.
Yeah.
And no one's even talking about it on Twitter because it just seems like there's so many more problems to address than that. Now, let's be honest. Like, if he doesn't get the penalty, they end up getting the ball back. Do they drive 80, 90 yards down the field with Mac Jones and that offense and score? Probably not, right? But like, it's still a talking point, and we didn't talk about it because I think there's bigger fish to fry. So to answer your question, Brent, I think it speaks volumes where maybe they do need more of that because it didn't offend me. It didn't offend you. We weren't. What was Walker doing? Like last night in the show, were you just like, "Hey, Trayvon, come on, man. What are you doing?"
To be honest with you, I forgot to do it.
Had Trayvon Walker last night in strings?
Yeah.
In strings.
He had answered it on Sunday.
Sure.
Kind of like, I was just trying to punch the ball out, which I kind of thought, this is a little bit on me because I just said it too. I didn't think it was a big deal at all.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong in not thinking it's a big deal, but I guess in part I didn't think it was a big deal because the Jags are going to get the ball back at like the 40-yard line and run a lateral play that's going to fumble and go out of bounds or something like that, right? I mean, that's what was about to happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was 3 minutes left in the game and that happened, or 2.5 or 1.5 or anything. I mean, the clock was winding down to about 8 seconds when they punted the ball, I think it was, or something. Mm-hmm. So, I get it, like a cherry on top thing, but I never really thought it was a consequential play in the game. And the other thing is this. I thought the ref, see what happened on that play is the ref throws from way outside, right? Because if you first look at the video, if you one time look at the video, it looks like he's punching a player the whole time.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that's what the ref on the outside saw. Now, what happened is he's punching at the ball, and even after the whistle, he's still punching at the ball and punching at the ball. There was another flag that went up in the middle of the melee. And then so I'm like, oh, this is going to be offsetting.
That's what I thought too.
And it wasn't. So they still called. So I think the guy that actually threw the flag initially thought he was punching at a player, didn't realize he's punching at a ball.
Yeah.
I think the guy that threw the flag on was
was
after
pushing
the whistle.
Yeah, was when Walker started to push him a little bit and stuff, which You know, I mean, you can't take it either way. But I just think like you take the punching of the ball and you take the pushing, and it's like, okay, let's give the guy a flag.
So were you, like, again, for me, it was an inconsequential play in the game.
Correct.
It wasn't. And by the way, then the reason why we didn't talk about it so much is because then there was the post game after. Right.
Yeah.
So,
couldn't lose in peace, Brent.
The final play of the game.
Couldn't.
Or the day.
We were going to overtime, man. We were going to overtime that day.
But so in real time though, were you bought like? Was it one of those things like, you're such an idiot?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like once they got the ball back and they ran out the clock, I'm like, yeah, the game's over. And then when the penalty happened with Walker, I think I literally, because I was by myself, I just go, yeah, it's about right. Like that seriously, like that kind of puts the bow on what the day was. Like, what was it? In retrospect, should it have happened? Absolutely not. Right? Like, yeah, I get you're trying to knock the ball out, but like, you know, it's a little extra, right? And then don't push the guy after.
Yeah.
Sure. But I get the frustration, right? Like if I was in that defense and we had they had 3 or 4 turnovers. They had 3 turnovers. And I feel like I got no support from my offense. Guess what? I probably would have ripped the guy's helmet off.
Yeah.
I would have been pretty pissed.
Yeah, Hamby, to me, it's like it's got a little bit of a feel of Cam Robinson throwing the helmet last year, where it's like you're not supposed to do that. But you know what? Good. Somebody finally did something.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I came down on it. And again, that doesn't mean I probably still should have asked Trayvon about it last night on the show. We got through, we got rocking and rolling, and I never asked him. I realized that at the end of the show. I'm like, oh, you dummy. We had him right there. But I genuinely, the reason why I wasn't like the lead story of our show or anything, because I just didn't. That's the way I looked at that play. Right or wrong, that's the way I looked at that play.
And y'all didn't even ask Doug about it post game.
Yeah, and again, same kind of reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't feel like a play in the game, right? First downs felt like plays in the game. The Mac pick felt like plays in the game. I mean, it just didn't feel like the game was over.
Trayvon had watched our offense for 4 quarters and thought that he had to score another touchdown like he did the week before.
There we go, man.
He's trying to
get the ball out.
Well, hey, listen, there's a smart nature of that play. That's your chance. I mean, your chance is to knock the ball away.
Especially
it's a Hail Mary on defense.
Yeah, it was excessive, of course, and that's why he got the flag, and that's too much. You got to reel that back in. But the idea of what he was doing was absolutely right. It's your only chance. And by the way, he is a powerful human being. If he can punch the ball out, go for it. They actually eventually did get the ball out.
Yeah.
It just was about 5 seconds after the whistle.
I didn't break the guy's forearm, dude.
I would have been a lot more upset if we just tackled the man with the ball and nobody's throwing a jab in there to get it out.
But see, like I think
you see that every once in a while at the very end of the games. It's just like, we just got to get him down. But like, you gotta try something.
I just think like that's Walker's detriment though, is that he's so big. Like it stood out that much more. Like, dude, if you had Lloyd doing this or something, I mean, Devin Lloyd's a pretty big dude too. But like, if you had like Boy Luke doing this, it'd be like, all right, just come on, stop, come on, let's go back to the huddle. But like, you got Trayvon Walker, all whatever, 6'4", 5", 200 and probably 90 pounds at this point, just like berating the football. Yeah, I was nervous. I thought someone was going to get hurt. It could have been a 10-8 round.
There's a couple of things. So just one last part, at least for me on that, is we have been asking for don't you want to see, when this is so frustrating, don't you eventually want to see somebody pissed off?
Case in point, you saw Mac, after he scored, everybody was like, let's go.
Yeah, get everybody going. But it's okay. I'm not saying the Debo stuff is too much to me. I mean, you grabbing the guy by the throat. But it's okay to show frustration. It's you got to be careful in the right moments and the 15-yard penalties. But man, for somebody to just spike a helmet once in a while,
everyone did. I mean, Brady did it, and people made a big deal about it. But like, that's called being. I don't want to say it's called being competitive, because I'm not trying to say, okay, well, these guys don't want to compete. Like, yes, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars, the players, they want to compete, right? They have pride. They don't want to lose football games. It's embarrassing. But I think it's right to say, hey, let's get a little fire, right? And there's some coaches that do this too, right? There's some coaches where after an embarrassing loss, after a rough loss, it's like, ooh, I'm kind of scared to ask him a question. Like, we haven't really got that from the coaching staff either. It's been, we've seen it.
For other
right?
reasons.
I don't want to go into it again, but like we've seen it. So, yeah, if we're not getting it reflected from the coaching staff, then we almost turn to the field and be like, all right, well, is somebody going to like kind of purvey the fact that we're pissed off right now?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and look, I mean, Jalen Ramsey would have been that guy, right? And at times it would be too much. It
would have been a
here in Jackson,
distraction.
right? At times. But there is a part, at least he's going to raise. There's nobody on this defense that you would personality-wise say, hey, look out, they might lose their mind here.
Do you think Dewey? I mean, obviously he can't do it right now because he hasn't been in. But
could be. I think Darnell Savage could.
Sure.
I don't know him enough, but I feel like because I don't know him enough, he could be. But, Josh is very measured. Josh is under control. And by the way, 99% of the time, these are all good qualities.
Of course.
Foye Oluokun is very under control. Devin Lloyd is under control. Cisco, under control player, right? Armstead is a veteran player. He's not going to lose his cool. And you know what? Trayvon, you would describe the same way. That's kind of why I like to see it a little bit from him. Like almost, you know what I mean? Again, time and place and all that stuff, maybe. But this is the one issue I think at times even the coaching staff has with Trevor. They want to see him get in somebody's face and grab a face mask. Yeah. And be like, if you're not going to run the damn route, I ain't throwing you the football. They want to see a little bit of that. But guess what? You can't fake that, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked about this before. You can't fake that. You are who you are. And this team is who they are. Doug can't do that because that's not his personality. He's very even keel, right? On the sideline. Yeah. You can't do that and just all of a sudden everybody be like, what the hell is he doing? Right? He looks like a fool. So, again, it's time and place, but this team doesn't have a lot of that. They really don't. They traded Cam Robinson, the only guy that really was that. You didn't kind of know what he was unpredictable. Is the way I would say. Yeah. At times, he's unpredictable in the locker room. You go up to Cam, you have best interview ever, and then he wouldn't talk to you for 3 weeks, right? Mm-hmm. That's Cam. But that unpredictable nature is a little bit of the game, can get you going, can keep people on edge, and can maybe spark you even at times. So, again, I didn't mind the Trayvon thing at all. As for Trayvon, it is amazing when you, just sit next to him how big of a human being he is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unreal. Unreal. That he is a specimen. Is he their freakiest player?
Walker?
On their roster? I mean, he's a 4.5.
We've been over. We talked about this a little bit. I think in terms of size, stature, what he can do on the field, sure. But I also think Brian Thomas Jr. for as tall as.
Right.
But I think it's kind of a horse apiece. But I would lean Walker.
Yeah. Yeah, speed and power and everything else. And hey, bottom line is he's having a good year overall. Yeah. And you can go Jags Report Live. We'll play today on Action Sports Jax 24/7 Network. We had Trayvon on last night, and you can watch some of that show. I don't know if we talk big picture enough about Trevor Lawrence and the Doug Pederson stuff and this offensive staff of where we're at in the Trevor thing. And it's a hard one to answer sometimes, right?
Yeah.
It's not staring you in the face. There are definite signs of improvement. There are definite, wow, this guy's good. There are oh, damn, why did he do that? And now even the turnovers are starting to add up a little bit. The injuries have added up over the last year. So that makes things choppy and really hard to tell because when you're hurt, is that really you? So toughness is good, but has been banged up. I guess the question Hamby was asking is, where are we at on the Doug Pederson, Press Taylor, Mike McCoy, Jacksonville Jaguars developing Trevor Lawrence from 22 to 23 to 24? It obviously has stalled this year. Have they got him to a point where the next guy comes in and he can just take off? Is there stuff to overcome and get so much better at? Or has he regressed? Where do you feel?
Yeah. Man, it's a valid argument because I want to say, yeah, he's gotten better, right? But then you look at when he's been in of how this offense has looked this season, and once again, this offense it's not just a knock on Trevor Lawrence, it's a knock on everybody, right? And then I think, okay, well, at least I think that this coaching staff will probably be gone by next year. We'll see what happens in Detroit. Maybe pull off a miracle. We'll see. But assuming that they're gone, okay, well, that's going to be a new offense. It's going to be a new system, new terminology. That takes time to learn. So then are we talking about another year of, okay, well, it's got to be a trial because you're not going to come in right away and know the offense, right? So it takes time to learn a new offense and everything. And especially it's not like in Buffalo where it's all right, you guys are already set up for success. So you bring a new coordinator in, run a couple different plays here or there and have success still. That's not going to be the case here. This team's not good on offense right now. It's a fact. So man, I think that it's hard to. I think. Okay, listen. It's a great question, Hamby. I think the biggest knock we go back to last year about Trevor Lawrence was hanging on to the football.
Yeah,
right. Was the turnovers?
Yep. Specifically fumbles.
He's done a drastically better job of cleaning that up. Okay, so that's a plus. I think we've seen some long throws that we haven't really seen, and a lot of that has to do with Brian Thomas Jr. as well. So, that's a plus. That's something new. That's another wrinkle that we knew he had, but it's almost like he was stifled so much where we couldn't really get a chance to see it.
You can argue he's a great, by the numbers, great deep ball thrower.
One of the best in the league.
Yeah.
So that's a plus. So I like that. But once again, it's the lack of points that make me nervous. It's the... it's just it's the bad throws. It's hitting a corner in the back of the head when he's trying to go deep. It's those plays right there. Now, can they be anomalies? Sure, but I think we talk about the elite quarterbacks. You can't have those plays. So, am I intrigued? Am I nervous for the next regime? Not really, because I think Trevor can be great. It's just the fact that he's got to get in the system that's going to allow him to flourish, and I think have the coaching staff that's going to allow him to flourish. And I thought Doug Pederson was going to be that guy.
Yeah.
I was excited. Look what we do with Carson Wentz. How could he not, develop Trevor Lawrence into a top 5 quarterback? Well, we're here right now.
Hamby, what do you think?
I mean, as a Trevor guy, it's really hard for me to admit that I think he's regressed. However, if I look at the 2022 comebacks at the last half of the year and how he was playing when we were 8-3 last year, I don't see the same guy. And I don't think necessarily, I guess this is me saying option C of all of these. I don't think he's regressed. I think that he stayed the same. And because the system, in my personal opinion, from what I know, which is not a lot, I'll admit, from what I know, the system to me looks the exact same from these 3 years. And it looks like defenses know exactly what we're doing and have caught up in a sense. So it's making Trevor at times look worse when he is the same player. He just hasn't gotten better, and other defenses have caught up, if that makes sense.
It's a really loaded question, right? Because as you guys are saying stuff, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, but, or that.
Right.
Yeah. And so let me just start from the beginning on this for a moment. First of all, I think you have to applaud the staff for being able to turn around the rookie season. There was a lot in that rookie season. There was a lot that I don't think players overcome. You have to credit Trevor, first of all, to be able to overcome that. There was an insane amount of stuff stacked up against him that rookie season. And I think people forget about that because it's years ago, and I think it's part of the story. You can't forget about it. So for him to have the fortitude, the confidence, the talent to be able to overcome that, for the coaching staff to pull him out of that. I'll just give you a quick little example of something that the coaching staff needed to do with him that I don't think people really would talk about too much. But Doug, I remember him saying multiple times, we got to teach him how to watch video. Watch the games, what to break down, what from a defense, what to, that's something he said, I don't even know what that exactly means. I'm just saying that's how almost elementary, how you watch it in the NFL versus how you watch it in college, right? And Urban staff and everybody else, obviously, Doug didn't think they were on par with where he needed to be, and that was just one of the things that they did. So there was a lot behind the scenes that they did to get him in the right place. They obviously had to teach him situational football. I think the number one problem still, potentially, with Trevor Lawrence is also maybe his greatest growth is that situational football stuff. I think he's gotten a lot better at it. The end zone picks to Houston and Chicago and London in that rookie year, right? They're like, what are you doing, right?
Yep.
This view of why would you do that in that spot? And a lot of that had to do because I got the arm that can get it there, right? I got the belief, I got the confidence that I can get it there. Well, he had to learn to back that down at times and do some of those things. Then people question, hey, can this guy win in the fourth quarter? There were some moments, remember, in 22 and 21 where he had opportunities and he didn't. Mm-hmm. Well, then on the back end of 22, they're coming back from double digits down and they're winning. And then obviously the Chargers game answers the bell. And even if you take the last couple of weeks before this week, of course, where he didn't play, those fourth quarters were on the verge of brilliance, except for a big mistake in the end zone against Philly at the end, which I could have blamed 15 people for. But he takes some of that. So there's those questions about the quarterbacks. If you're going to be great, you got to be able to lead your team back. But even Miami earlier this year, right? You get the ball back with 4 minutes to go. Can you do more with it? Didn't do anything enough with it. You said fix the fumbles. He said absolutely fix the fumbles. I would say this about their offense because I don't know the X's and O's. And I've seen this a lot this year and even late last year about this offense. This offense is broken. The scheme is old. Like, this scheme doesn't fit great. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know enough about that. I don't know what that means. I saw an offense that scored 28 a game through a 4-week stretch earlier this year. I saw an offense that was really clicking at times last year and scoring whatever they did. I've seen this offense work in Jacksonville, and I also have seen this offense be better than any offense, this scheme be better than any offense I've covered in 16 years. So maybe I've got scar tissue, and relatively speaking, I think this offense is freaking the greatest show on turf compared to what I used to watch. Except for the last 2 weeks, because it feels like this is what I used to watch the last 2 weeks. But part of the criticism of that offense was everything was sideways. Well, what did Press Taylor and Doug Pederson and Trevor Lawrence fix this year? And to Trent Baalke's credit, too, they go get Brian Thomas Jr., they get Gabe Davis, they go vertical. They're one of the most explosive teams in the National Football League this year by percentage. So They have fixed some of those kind of things. And by the way, Trevor wants to be the guy pushing the ball down the field. And it's obvious why. He's got the arm to do it. He did it at Clemson. Everything was down the field. If you go back to his rookie season, some of the problems he had early on was he was being too aggressive down the field because he wanted it all, right?
Yeah.
He wants that. And he had to reel it back in. And he has been able to do that with the Indianapolis games where it gives him that test. Okay, you don't have to take shots. Don't take shots. Don't take shots. Be patient, 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 patient. And he's been brilliant at that. And now he's been able to get the deep ball as well. So, like, I think of all these areas, and as I talk about that, and if I don't tell you the Jags are 2-8, and I don't tell you even his numbers or anything else right now, you would say, man, he's gotten a lot better. Right? He's got a lot of strides here or there.
Yeah.
I think the thing that hampers him, I would say, is twofold. Well, possibly threefold, but I don't know if it's the offense. Ben Johnson or somebody else is going to have to come in here and figure out if it's the offense, right? That's holding him back. I don't know that. But I think from his standpoint, where he would, at least right now, has seemed to just stop. To me, he's stuck. To answer my own question, I don't think he's regressed. I think he's actually had wins in a lot of other areas. I think he might be lifting this offense more than it's capable if you look at what it's been doing the last couple of weeks. There's a possibility of that. I think he saves the offensive line in sacks. Like, I think he does a lot of these different things. But I think he still needs to do two things to be able to be the guy that he wants to be, the guy that this franchise needs him to be, and that is consistency. Yeah. He needs to be more consistent. Even this year, he had a stretch of 3 games where it was just bad football for him. I mean, he lost the Houston game. The Houston game was there for him. You can't miss those plays if you're that kind of quarterback to that degree. If you miss one, I'm okay. But you can't miss like 3, 4, 5. I mean, there was a lot in that game. You can't have that game. In a 17-game season, that costs you the playoffs sometimes. And it might have cost them momentum, quite frankly, this year, with him having a poor game in that one. And then the other thing is I still think there's situational awareness stuff. I don't know how you can't at least say that coming off the Philly game. It's like, is there another option? Is there something else to see? Is there something else to know that you need to do something different with that football so that doesn't happen, even if the Ernest Johnson didn't run through, even if the coaches were dumb for making the call, all those things. And then part of that equation is how much is he checking in and out of stuff? Because we don't know that. We just don't know. I go back to that Philly play, which really wasn't diagnosed and discussed a lot, but that 4th and 1. He had quarterback sneaked on 3rd and 1. What was the play call on 4th and 1? I don't know this, but did he check out of it?
Yeah.
And if he did, that wasn't a smart play, it doesn't appear, right? So we just have so little information, I think, that we don't know where he is from a situational standpoint, his understanding of the game. I think he's grown leaps and bounds in that part. I do think you have to give credit to Doug and Press and Mike McCoy and those guys for that. But at least for being stuck right now, I also think you have to blame those same offensive guys and maybe this offense in general for being where we're at right now in Jacksonville and an offense that just looks like it's stuck in the mud.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, and that's. I mean, we'll see what's again like how this offseason shakes out. But the biggest question, I think, going into the offseason, besides who the Jaguars are going to take with the the first round pick, was this more on Trevor this past season in terms of the offense and the stagnation, or was it more on the coaching? Right now, coaching is the easy part. Right, like that's the easy answer.
Easy to blame, yeah.
It's easy to blame because, all right, I mean, because we saw with Mac Jones, right? But then if you dig deeper, it's like, okay, well, has Trevor Lawrence showed the ability to elevate when things, go wrong? No, it doesn't help when guys are dropping balls and things like that. And that kind of goes hand in hand, I feel like, where he needs the guys around him to play perfect ball, or else it seems like it's not going to be a winnable game. I think there's some quarterbacks out there. Like, listen, if you watch the Chiefs this year, like, there's been drop balls. Last year was even more evident when you had like Kadarius Toney, Valdez-Scantling drop the game winner. Like, you had a couple times where guys were dropping balls that cost them the game. But like, it didn't seem to really stifle Mahomes. Like, he still found a way at the end to win a Super Bowl, despite who you're throwing the ball to. And I think with Trevor, you aren't even close to being there yet. So no, I'm not trying to make up excuses now and saying, okay, this is all on Trevor, because it's not. But also, I feel like he's to the point right now in his career where he needs everything around him to be perfect. Because we always want to say, like, okay, Trevor's got to play perfect to win the football game, right? I'm not even sure if that's the case anymore with this team, Brent. Like, I think Trevor can have a monumental day and this team could still lose a football game. But I think if everybody around him played better and everything, then you might win a little bit. Like, he's not to the point in his career right now where everyone around him can elevate his play. He has to do it himself.
Yeah.
And I get it's the quarterback, so.
Yeah, it's what are you saying there that I kind of piqued my interest? It was more, does he have to play perfect, or does everything have to go right for it to be good for him? I disagree with that. And here's why I disagree. Because, one, I think he's already overcome a lot. I think he's overcome a shaky offensive line over the last few years at times. I think he's overcome more drops than anybody else in the league, or at least he's battled through it. I don't know if he's overcome it because I haven't won enough. But I also think he's a really good off-platform guy. Like, I think he's okay. I shouldn't say really. I don't know if he's like where he would be. I don't know if he's elite off-platform, but he's fine off-platform. Like, he can get out of stuff. He can roll around. He can move. He can throw on the run. I don't think he's bad at that. Like, he can scamper and make some plays. So I think he makes some things out of nothing, is my point, to say it doesn't have to be perfect. He can still do things.
But do you think he has, like,
like Mac Jones, it kind of has to be perfect because he can't move.
Right. Of course. You know what I mean? Trevor has the mobility.
And he doesn't have super arm strength.
But I think there's some quarterbacks who, like, have like that improvisational, is it improvisational? I don't know.
Improv whatever. There. I get what you're saying.
And I'm not sure if Trevor's really that guy yet.
I don't know if he'll ever be that guy. Like, I don't know if he's that, like, you're talking, like, Mahomes stuff, right? You're talking Lamar stuff. You're talking Josh Allen.
Here's what I'm saying, I guess. Like, if you put Trevor Lawrence in San Francisco's offense, where it's like, it's more of the Shanahan show than it is the Purdy show. Or you put him even in Minnesota where, I get Sam Darnold maybe can call his own stuff, but it seems like you're more of a product of the system than you are actually a great quarterback with Sam Darnold. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Sam Darnold's calling audibles and everything, but I get the vibe that it's more of the play calling than it is Sam Darnold. So like, I feel like if you put Trevor in those situations, this dude would be a Pro Bowler. But if you put him in a situation where it's more of like, hey, man, we need you to kind of just improvise here, and I don't think he's made for that.
Yeah, I bet you're probably right. We're going to take a time out, but here's my biggest critic. Go ahead.
The follow-up I was going to say, though, then, if that's the case, then get a coach, get a coordinator that's going to cater towards that.
Yeah, and that's my biggest critic. Go ahead, Andy.
It goes to my next question, is whether I think Trevor has lost confidence that Doug and Press can take him where he wants to be, or where he wants to go.
All right, let's do that part when we come back. All right, but let me just finish this because I'll definitely forget. I think all quarterbacks, even the Mahomeses and the Josh Allens, we found this out over the last year with Josh Allen. And this is where I think the Jags have made a mistake, with Doug Pederson and Press Taylor have made a mistake at times. And I got a few examples of it this year, if we can get into that maybe on the other side. You know this guy. You know his strengths. You know his weaknesses. You know how he thinks. You know the flaws. You know what he can get in trouble at. That's why you don't call the play on first down the other day against the Eagles.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's why you don't call the Cleveland play in the back of your end zone.
Yeah.
When you're down by 3.
You didn't set him up for success.
You're setting up hoping that he is going to figure out the math formula that he's yet to figure out, or at least that he struggles with, or it takes him a while to figure out. There are other math equations on the football field that he does very, very well that you could set him up in those critical spots.
No, like, You have him doing quadratic equations with no calculator. Give him a calculator and run the football on that play against the Eagles, or at least like a short dump off pass, something, because you love the dump off pass, but then all of a sudden we want to get cute and then throw it to a third string running back in the end zone.
And that's not, by the way, a major criticism. He's not perfect. He's not going to know everything. He's not going to have every answer. Maybe in another 3 years he does have every answer, but you've got to know where his answers are going to get in trouble. And you have got to not call those plays in those critical spots. I think at times they've put him almost in a test to figure out if he can pass it.
Yeah.
Well, he might not be ready to pass that one. In 3 years, he might pass it, or 2 years. Is that his fault? Maybe. But the bottom is, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It's reality.
Yeah.
The reality is this is what you've got. You know him better than anybody, and you know he's capable of making that decision to go to Dearness Johnson in that spot. Don't put him in that situation on first down.
It's just sad, man, that we're in, year 4 right now of the Trevor Lawrence I say experiment, but the experience, we'll call it. And, like, the sample size should be big enough, but I still don't know, man, because you couple with all the drop balls, you couple with all the penalties, you couple with all the bad play calling, and it's like, I don't know what Trevor Lawrence can be. I really don't know.
I don't know what he can be, but I still have not wavered that he's the guy. Like, I'm glad they paid him. I think I'm more shifted now toward, I think the way this offense is and this whole Doug stuff and press stuff, it's just, maybe it's not as great a marriage and fit as we thought it was. That's going to be a little bit more from Hamby's question. Do they have to move on just because, hey, listen, nice job. They got him back on track, but to really take him to the next level, and this team, and this franchise, it's time to move on to somebody else who can figure that part out. Beautiful day here in Jacksonville. Brent Austen Show on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 Network.
Welcome back to the Brent and Austin Show, streaming on the Action Sports Jacks 24/7 Network.
Look at that 24/7 network. We got to hop in some of those shows. Well, one of those shows, Friday Night Zone Blitz, no longer. But we do have the 10:30 Friday Night Blitz, and it's a playoff edition coming up this Friday. We mentioned after the game with Chip Stroud. That's coming up at 2 o'clock today right here on the network. And then all the other shows that we have all week long. Keep growing the network. I got another meeting today about some new content going on the network. And 2025 should be a lot of fun here with Action Sports Jacks 24/7. Crazy to think we're almost a year old on this new product. Audio still unbearable. What's Z Fortner talking about?
I don't know.
Is he saying loud, or it must be loud if it's unbearable? In the commercials or in general? Give us a little more feedback on that, Z Fortner. That's the first we're hearing about that. So unless I missed it in some other messages. So, let us know. What's interesting and what we find sometimes, by the way, because we're on so many different platforms, is that sometimes the audio will range on if you're watching it on Twitter versus if you're watching on YouTube versus Facebook versus Vizio or Apple TV. And so we try to play with that a little bit, but give us some feedback. Constantly going in and out. And he's watching is he watching on YouTube? Yeah, it looks like he's watching on YouTube. We'll see what we can do. Thanks for giving us a heads up.
Oh, third word. Yeah, it must.
Somebody said it must be your internet.
Yeah.
It's your fault.
I thought it was like referring to my accent or something. The audio. Sorry, man. I'm trying to fix it. Wisconsin stuff.
I can start talking a Rhode Island accent too.
Let's go.
Chowder. Man, I could use some chowder. Want to let you know, and we always like to do, about our friends at Jack's Pal, the Jacksonville Police Athletic League, Action Sports Jacks, and Brent Austen Show has partnered up with Jack's Pal, and you can too, jackspal.org, especially around the holidays and looking into 2025. Go take a look at their website, jackspal.org, and see all the different programs they have and what they do for the youth in the area. And you can make small donations or bigger donations, be a part of the programs as well in all different parts of Northeast Florida, helping provide for the community since 1972. Brent Martineau, Austin Lane, Jason Hamby, and Trevor Lawrence. He's not here, but we are talking about him. Hamby has some good thoughts today. Good topics. I like it. We just said, where is Trevor Lawrence from a growth and development stage? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell when you're 2-8. Mm-hmm. I think there are growth signs. I think you'll hear Trevor say this quite a bit. Like, he's doing things that he wanted to work on in the offseason, and he feels like he's in a good place with them. what would be an interesting dive into Trevor Lawrence when the season's over or whenever he's willing to talk about it is, okay, have you regressed on some of the things you fixed from last year? Or where are the other growth points? So it's never perfect. We get that. That's fair enough. But I also think one more down point to Trevor, I think you have to put some blame on the quarterback in third downs. I'm sure it's the play call and everything else, but third down, the way they have been on third down, I do think that's a quarterback down. And so getting you in the right protection, getting you right play, executing on the play, being accurate, all those things, I do think that's a quarterback down. So he's going to have to get better there, and I think they can put him in better situations. That comes back to play calling and everything else and overall execution. But what Hamby just said, and Hamby, why don't you repeat it, because you're the one that said it, about where they're going.
Yeah, it's with these struggles and with the just being 2-8 and the inefficiencies on offense. If he has regressed, really, if he has it or not, it doesn't really matter because they're not winning. But has Trevor lost confidence in Doug, Press, Mike McCoy, maybe the whole coalition in general? But I think for the sake, we'll just say Doug because that's where we have the most information. Has Trevor lost confidence in Doug that Doug can take him to where he wants to go, where Doug can help him be an elite quarterback? Or does Trevor think, I got to go do this on my own? Doug is not the guy who can help me as much as, he's gotten me here, but he can't take me any further.
So this is coming from a guy who's not in the locker room, doesn't talk to players, who doesn't interview coaches, right? All I go off of is what I see at press conferences and what I see on the field, right? That's how I make my observations. And I think it's been pretty obvious that there's been a little bit of a disconnect. Now, will there be a disconnect when you're 2-8? Absolutely. Any team's going to have disconnect. So, I'm not saying that it's anything that we're shocked by, but I do think, when Trevor Lawrence brought up, we have to coach better. We got to play better. That to me was telling. Now, it may have been telling to a lot of people, but it was telling to me because as a player, you're always programmed, don't bring up coaching. Don't bring up coaching. Especially a quarterback, right? Especially the leader of your team. So once I heard that soundbite, whatever it was, week 3, week 4, it seems so long ago now, that's when I started pricking up my ears a little bit and listening okay, well, maybe there's something going on here a little bit. I think it speaks volumes, in press conferences when nobody really seems to have an answer, right? And this was echoed from Doug and it was echoed from Trevor, we didn't expect to be here right now. That's justifiable, okay. But it's more of we have to look ourselves in the mirror. We have to get right. Yeah, these are all great things to say to try to turn things around, but I'm not seeing solutions. So if we have a coach that's not really giving you a solution, once again, this is just a press conference, and you have a quarterback that's not really speaking on solutions, then yeah, I think there's a disconnect.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's one way to look at it, right? Is there a little lack of trust, I think, is what you're saying, Hamby? I think, are you saying there's a disconnect? I think, I feel like I can get this from Doug's side and the coach's side more than Trevor's side and read into it. And I would say there's frustration that he's not further along as they hoped. I said this a little bit yesterday. I think Doug has high expectations for almost every player in the National Football League. You don't see him laud players very much. I think his ceiling of where he thinks everybody is might be yeah, we should all operate this way, right? I say this about smart people sometimes. If you're really bright, this is very hard sometimes to get on other people's level. And that can be hard. And I'm not just saying that tongue in cheek, but you see things a certain way, but we all don't see it your way, right? And I think Doug has a little bit of this in him from a football standpoint. He's seen Martineau. He's seen Favre. He's been around Andy Reid. All these things. He's seen it elite. He's seen it at the highest of its levels. And he feels like Trevor has some of that or all of that in him, but isn't getting it fast enough. And so some of these things that when you're not hitting the receivers in Houston, or you're not making a right read or a play, and something that looks probably elementary to Doug because he's been around the game so long, is he bothered by that? Is it frustrating? And I would say absolutely yes. I think that's some of Doug's frustration. Does that mean he hates Trevor Lawrence? No. Right? Does that mean he doesn't believe in Trevor Lawrence? I don't think so. I just think he feels like he should be further along. Now, you can flip that around, Austin, and say, well, it's still on you to help him through that, right? It's your job to help him. Don't get mad and frustrated about it. How can you talk to him a little bit different? How can you communicate it a little bit different? How can you get him over that next hump? That's part of coaching, and I'm sure he's had plenty of examples of that in the 3 years, but now we're on to the next example, and maybe he feels out of answers. So has he hit the ceiling of how he can develop Trevor? Has he kind of like, all right, I thought this was going to get us to the next level. It's not. And maybe I am out of answers. Like, if you're not going to get this part, I don't know how to tell you. If you're not going to get C, I can't get you to D.
But see, this is what I can't understand, though, Brent, about how this whole ordeal has played out. Doug Pederson in Philly, right? He wins a Super Bowl. Bill does the underdogs. Nobody gave him a chance in hell to win the Super Bowl, right? Oh, you lost your starting quarterback in Carson Wentz, who was an MVP candidate, and you're going to replace him with Nick Foles? Best of luck to you. But the ego of Doug Pederson goes, we're going to embrace this underdog role, and we're going to get we're going to get the job done. Now, it didn't end well in Philly, right? He kind of wanted to do things his own way, had a problem with the front up, whatever the case may be. So he leaves. He doesn't really get interviewed by a lot of, teams in the NFL as a second candidate, for a second job, but Jacksonville gives him a chance. So right there, if I'm Doug Pederson, I'm a little pissed off because I won a Super Bowl. Kiss the ring. What more do you want from me? And I'm not getting interviewed by every single NFL team. And we celebrated when the Jaguars did it because it's like, what are we not? Yeah, bring Doug Pederson here. Look at the track record. Look at the resume. An offensive-minded guy who calls plays, it's a no-brainer. It's a layup. Go. Get him. You get him. And why does Doug Pederson come to Jacksonville? Well, because we have a guy by the name of Trevor Lawrence, right? You have a quarterback who you can mold. I get it. Had a bad year with Urban Meyer, right? Maybe some damaged goods a little bit. But the ego in me, if I'm Doug Pederson, would say, I can change all that. I can change what Trevor Lawrence went through with Urban Meyer. I can mold him. I can shape him. And I can get the job done. Now, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a guy who's hard to work with. So sometimes I watch Baker Mayfield. I'm like, dude, I love Baker Mayfield. But, you get the sense sometimes that maybe, his quarterback coach or coordinator is like, Baker, man, can we just relax?
Settle down here.
Dude, can we settle down a little bit, man?
Just
come on, dude. Get off the Zins. We aren't seeing Trevor Lawrence on the sidelines popping Zin like Tic Tacs. Okay? The dude seems to be pretty even keeled. So maybe it didn't go the way you expected in terms of him picking up the offense or him taking the coaching, whatever the case may be. But then once again, where does the ego come in if you're Doug Pederson go, okay, well, maybe this way isn't working. Let me try a different way. This is still a quarterback who can be an elite guy. Let me get that out of him. It almost seemed like this year it's like, oh, he's making mistakes. Oh, he maybe checked out of this. I don't want him to check out of this. Oh, he didn't throw the right guy. And it's like, I'm done. It's all of a sudden like you take your ball and go home. And I don't understand it.
Yeah, I would say this, and I want to be fair, and I know it's come off at that. I know it's perception of that. I don't believe that's the case.
But that's all I have to go off of, Brent.
I get it. And I've said there's been a few weeks, even Friday, right, the pain tolerance thing. I think this has been painted like Doug doesn't like Trevor, and they don't like each other all of a sudden and all this stuff. I'm not telling you that doesn't exist. I'm just telling you I see no evidence of that, and I don't believe that to be true. I think these guys still are on the same page. I think this is more just, can you take the guy to the level he needs to go? Because if you really want to go back through the track record, you're talking about as a head coach at least. Because he worked under Andy Reid for so long. I'm not telling you he didn't help other quarterbacks, but Andy Reid we know is very good too. So how much was Doug and how much was Andy Reid and everything else? So we have Philly. But didn't we have this kind of example? He took Carson Wentz and made him a 7-9 quarterback and a 16-14 touchdown interception guy into an MVP candidate in year number 2. Mm-hmm. But by the way, he took Trevor Lawrence in year number 1, turned the ball over, throwing bad picks, great run into the postseason, 8-3 record all the way until he got hurt. He was in the mixes for a stretch there in the second half of 22 as one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. But then after that, it was over for Carson Wentz. Yeah. So is there an example here that Doug does a great job
in the immediate
of actually getting the boom, instant results, really is able to, but sustaining that. Right. There's not a lot of history that shows us that Doug can sustain and get to the next level. Now, I'll also throw this in there because I don't know. I'll throw this in there for a bit. You take Russell Wilson or you take a Tom Brady or take Patrick Mahomes. because that's the best example. Is Andy Reid still elevating Patrick Mahomes? Or is now it's like, okay, you know all this. You are who you are, right? Like you get to a point where you are who you are.
Sure.
So when does the tutoring, the mentoring, the growth kind of just be like, okay, this is who you are? Trevor's not. I don't feel like this
Trevor
is
hasn't
who he is, right?
If this is the plateau of Trevor Lawrence, then I would
be surprised.
I would be super surprised.
Right? So there's all that stuff in there, and I don't think there's a concrete answer. I just think there's evidence back in Philly, Hamby, of, man, he was able to get the immediate, like really spike this thing quick. I mean, he's crypto, baby. He's like, get this thing up there. But then
To the moon.
Yeah, then it's like, okay, but where's the next step when needed? Well, once it was done, is that on him? Is just a bad quarterback? Or is that a little bit on the coaching and development part of this that he never got to that next stage?
Right.
And Doug didn't know how to take him there. And that's the stage we're at with Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, listen, there's obviously Carson Wentz, former first-round pick himself, right, and showed like he had all the capabilities to be a great quarterback in the league for a long time. I think it does speak a little volume, though, Brent, when Doug left. It's not like Carson had a resurgence or anything.
True.
You know, like there's some, like Sam Darnold's a classic example, right? Like Sam Darnold, maybe a bad situation in New York, was in Carolina for a bit, but now has seemed, despite what we saw against the Jaguars, but has seemed to found a home now in Minnesota. Carson Wentz never really found a home after Doug left.
True.
You know, he's just kind of a backup quarterback
He kept regressing.
He kept regressing. So I think that's the only difference. Now, like, time will tell with Trevor Lawrence. Does he take leaps forward? Does he kind of stay the same and plateau? I have a hard time believing that we've seen the best of Trevor Lawrence. And I think with Andy Reid, who, you know, is the quarterback guru, like, yeah, I think you get to a point where it's like, how much more can you possibly do? Right? Like, you have the guy throwing a football behind his back in preseason.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Maxed it out.
Yeah.
Okay? Unless, like, he wants to do a reverse hurdle like Saquon Barkley. I think that's all we're going to see now from Patrick Mahomes. It's like, what more can you possibly do? But I think the genius of Andy Reid is that, okay, once you've had your quarterback plateau a little bit, now you got to elevate the team around him. Yeah. Right? And this is where play calling, this is where scheme comes into play, because if you look at the offense last year, they didn't necessarily have the players that had a Super Bowl roster on offense. And yeah, it was more carried by the defense last year, but it was just enough to win a Super Bowl with that offense as well.
I'm more and more getting onto the train where he's reached his peak.
Trevor Lawrence?
Meaning Doug.
With Doug,
Press,
and Mike McCoy. The next level of I feel like there's only one more uptick to go with Trevor. Right, there's only one more leap. It's not like there's like 4 left for him to get to being elite. I think he is legitimately one leap, and I think that's one coach away. And I just don't think it's Doug.
By the way, hey, this is common. Like, this isn't a negative thing in a way. Like, there's something to be said for the guy that turned you around from Urban Meyer's year to get you where it. See, that's why I disagree with people that say Doug's been bad or this or that or he's hurting. No, I think he's actually done a lot for Trevor Lawrence. I really do. I think that's why you go back to the admiration soundbite that we had, you know, with Doug, with Trevor about Doug. I just do think in all walks of life, and probably ours, everybody's probably had something in your career. You probably have it in fight world now too, where somebody gets you to a level and you're like, okay, who's going to get me to the next level? I did this with my own kids. Like, I haven't taught Ty how to swing a bat since he was 12 years old.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know anything else past that. I'm like handing it off to the experts, right? Like, yeah, I knew a little bit about baseball. I can get you. I haven't said anything about Ty's swing since he was 12.
Except for swing the bat or don't swing the bat.
Well, maybe the mental side of it,
Yeah.
right? But not physically.
Right.
So, like, we all have to do that in our own little ways. And this is what you can appreciate about what they're doing with Goff and what they're doing with Darnold. And not everybody's good at this. See, I don't know if Wentz turned bad and regressed or was just like an aberration. Maybe he just didn't have the right fit with the next guy he was with.
Sure.
And that guy couldn't get him to the level. Darnold has tried multiple places. Multiple places couldn't get him to where O'Connell has him right now. O'Connell, hat tip, man. Very good. He's able to tap into something few have been able to tap into. Baker Mayfield, Liam Cohen, whoever was the OC last year with Baker. Because Cohen wasn't last year, right? Canales, right? Wasn't it Canales that got the Carolina job a couple years ago or something? Listen, not everybody you fit with is going to take you to the level where you need to go. And Ben Johnson's doing it right now with Goff.
Yeah.
That's why you get excited about the potential of that, because he tapped into something with Goff, and guess what? It looks like he's got a better canvas to work with a guy like Trevor if he could do the same type of things, right? Yeah. Now, he might not have a better offense to work with, but he might have a better player to work with a guy like Trevor Lawrence if he could do the same thing. So I think people view this as a negative. I just think this is one of the things that Shad has to ask himself. Shad has to wonder. Trevor has to ask himself, listen, I admire these guys. I like these guys. These guys have been very good for my career, but are they going to take me to that next level? This is why people change jobs, right, to get to the next level. And we might need to change coaches here in Jacksonville to get this young man to his highest level.
This will be a question more down the line, in the offseason when things kind of shake out a little more in terms of teams and looking for new coaches and everything. But, we've both talked about this before already on the show, where if the Jaguars do go in a new direction and bring in a new head coach, how nervous does it make you? Because I feel like the sex appeal of trying to come to Jacksonville now is kind of done, because Trevor is a veteran in this league now. He's not a young guy that coaches can kind of take and mold. Like, I kind of feel like who he is, who's who he is. Like, yeah, you can elevate him and you can get better play out of him, but like, it's not just a blank canvas anymore. And if that's the case, then like, what else is appealing you to come to Jacksonville when, well, you'll be playing probably out of the city for a couple years while the stadium's getting built, going to have some games in London. Does it make you nervous then, like you may not get the best possible suitor for Trevor Lawrence?
I think that's fair to wonder. I don't think it's a slam dunk they get a guy like Ben Johnson, quite frankly. I think there's going to be a lot of competition.
I think when Dallas is going to be available, it looks like that makes me nervous.
No, man, they're going to go after Deion Sanders.
Yeah,
give me a freaking break.
Here's the other thing, by the way, about the Ben Johnson thing. I will say this. He looks to be a wonderful play caller. He's done a terrific job with Goff in Detroit. That does not make him a good head coach.
Got to be a leader.
That does not make him a good head coach. Like, you should be nervous about that part. This is not automatic. I get everybody wants change, but it's not automatic.
He's not. I mean, I don't know him personally.
I have no idea about it.
But I feel like it's almost the Bill Belichick effect, where like there's only one Bill Belichick. There's only one Dan Campbell.
There's absolutely. He is not like Dan Campbell. There's nobody like him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can't expect to bring him in as okay. We have the Lions version 2.0. It's not how it's going to work.
And that should make you, like, that's not it, okay? Don't get fooled by that. I think everybody has to be aware of that. But I will tell you this, Austin. I really believe that Trevor Lawrence is still the most attractive thing about this organization. And I think if you ask any coach that's about to go take a job, I would say at least 8 out of 10 of them would say the same thing. And they'd sign up for that. I think people see his talent. I think people know who he is as a person, young man, all that stuff. I think people want to work with that. Now again, you might have you might have a couple that say no, like that don't. I think Ben Johnson, from everything I understand, he's one that would say yes on the Trevor front. But and I think most offensive guys would.
Okay.
Given his abilities and everything. And keep in mind, there's always this arrogance with the offensive guy that thinks he can get me to play quarterback in the National Football League, right? Because I can make it work.
Yeah.
There's one other thing about this, okay, from the Doug standpoint, that this is a very interesting conversation. We're kind of taking this all over. I love the topic, Camby. There is a way to elevate a quarterback without necessarily working on talents and mindset and everything else. It is the calling of plays. And see, we can sit here and I go back and forth with people, and it's almost become a diminished topic on the play calling. But this is why you should have had Doug play calling the whole time. We can blame it just on him. And I understand the offense is going through. We all look at it, right? We all sit there and we criticize press. Doug hears every play call. Doug knows every play call. I would just say there's more to it from where we've come from on this topic. It's the voice. It's the confidence. It's the feel. I will tell you this, nobody in a leadership position is going to have somebody making a call 50 times a game and veto every single one of them, right? So Doug's not making every call of the game. I just think there's something to all of that this year and last year probably that is why this has been a bigger topic than press is bad. No, it's Doug is good. It's Doug's deal that breeds confidence. This is why we're doing it. All these things we're showing, I'm hearing it from his voice. Like, I think there's something to that. And that's the confidence maybe we talked about yesterday, where a Campbell saying, hey, nobody else around the league believes in you. I believe in you, right?
Yeah.
I think those things come from the head coach. Press Taylor can't do that kind of stuff. That stuff comes from the head coach. And I think the Jags missed on that, having that voice, having that confidence, having that guy that beat Belichick in the Super Bowl, because Doug just didn't want to do that role for a variety of reasons that he hasn't shared many times.
Listen, this was the one talking point that I didn't bring up because it was in the back of my mind, but I hate talking about it, Brent, because it feels like I'm kicking a can down the road. It's just like...
I think we're all like that now, right?
We've been here so many times, and I'm so sick and tired of putting my energy in this conversation. But yeah, since you brought it up, cool, let's do it again. This is the biggest thing of why I don't really feel sorry for Doug Pederson, because, okay, yeah, maybe he hasn't got the best out of Trevor Lawrence, right? And maybe there's some frustration there, and maybe he's pissed because people aren't living up to expectations. Maybe that's the case, right? And giving Doug a complete benefit of the doubt, which I'm not going to do, but just for the sake of the argument, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, right? Where players aren't playing to their capabilities, quarterback's not playing his best, all this stuff, okay. But you let it happen, because you aren't calling the plays, right? And you can't sit here and say that if you called the plays, everything would be the same, because that's just not true, okay? Like, everyone sees the game differently. Everybody calls the game differently. And what Press Taylor has done in terms of calling plays, it hasn't been great. Now, guess what? If for some reason we missed the key where you changed it up and you were calling plays these past couple weeks, but it didn't say anything, well, then guess what, man? That's still on you, because then you should have let everybody know. But you didn't. So I don't feel sorry for the situation. It's really where a lot of my, I think, resentment and frustration comes from. Just because, all right, you want to say Trevor's not playing to his best capabilities. Okay, well then how about we see his best capabilities? How about we see the true sample size and you call the plays?
Yeah.
Now let's talk about Eric Armstead next. You're all the way pissed off, Brent.
No, I do. Listen, I think what people have talked about is the play calling. Sometimes it's not just the actual play calling. It's not the play call. There's a lot of semantics that goes into it. And again, that relationship, I think there are a lot of semantics and small little things that go into the relationship between the quarterback and the coach. And I think that's why you find many of the head coaches who are offensive guys call plays because of that. So anyway. There are a lot of people down there who don't think this is a big topic at all. They continue to do that. That's fine. I think they're missing some of the bigger picture part of that too, though. And that's just a topic that's never going to change.